Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of Kickstarters launching this week. If you're new to the channel, we do this every week, so make sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with all these campaigns. And also check out Alex's channel over at BoardGameCo. We're nearing the end of the month, and at the end of every month, Alex will release a video going over all the games that we know of so far that will be launching over the next 30 days. He also releases a ton of really great content and reviews that you don't want to miss, so definitely subscribe to his channel, and I'll leave a link to that somewhere up here. You can also go ahead and check out our Discord in the description below, which just straight up covers all the campaigns that we know of so far. And this isn't just a shameless plug. I'm actually a web developer and I put a lot of work into the Discord and the Discord bot in order to arrange these channels and automate a lot of this process. So I really do think that this is the best place on the internet other than our YouTube videos to find out about all the upcoming campaigns. And there's a very active community here that's always posting about new exciting campaigns that are just being announced. And it looks like we just had Cyberpunk announced by Come On Games, so there you go. Definitely check that out. We have all the games categorized by their launch dates and they update in real time. And also all these little green check marks actually mean that the publisher or designer had submitted the info. So this is pretty much the most accurate release dates that you could possibly get. So this lets you know exactly which info was provided by a publisher or which was provided by the Discord community. There's a lot more cool stuff about the Discord, but I'll let you discover that on your own. For now, let's go ahead and check out those Kickstarters. And the first campaign we have is launching on August 30th, and this was actually one that I had announced last week, but it got postponed to this week. And this is called The Age of Trains, and this plays 2 to 4 players and takes about 60 to 90 minutes to play. And this is a game that focuses on pick up and deliver, worker placement, and stock holding. And at the start of the game, players are going to choose a map that they want to play on. The maps are going to represent different countries, and there's going to be real locations that you can actually visit on those maps. The map is also going to determine the player count and the number of rounds that the game is going to have. So depending on the player count, you're going to be choosing from a subset of maps. To win the game, you're going to be trying to score the most victory points, and there's a couple ways that you can gain victory points. One is by delivering different types of cargo from the private or public sector to different locations on the map. And then you can also buy stocks in the different ports, and if your investments pay off, you'll gain victory points for those investments. The game features both a main board and individual player boards, and the main board is going to be used to determine the player's available actions, and it's also going to track the progress of the game as the game plays out. The main player board is going to monitor individual players' progress and the improvements that they make on their trains. And there's a few different improvements that you can make in different categories. You can upgrade your engine, hopper wagon. You can also add additional wagons or buy specialist cards. And specialist cards will give you some special rule-breaking abilities. And then on August 31st, we have Mythic Mischief, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 45 to 90 minutes to play. And in this game, players are going to be students in a school fighting for control over the enchanted library. Players will be controlling factions of different creatures such as trolls, vampires, wizards, zombies, and a few others, and likely more to be uncovered throughout the campaign. And students are not supposed to be causing mischief in the library, so the goal of this game is to try and get all the other characters caught in the game without getting your own characters caught. And you're going to be able to do this in a number of different ways. You'll be able to move around the board, and the board represents the library, of course. And the library is enchanted, which means that it's going to be changing its form from time to time, which means that things like these shelves in the library will actually be moved around throughout the game, and that will be putting different restrictions on the different characters in the game and the way that they're going to be able to move through the library. To try and reach their goal, players will be able to move their own character around the library, trying not to get caught, and they're going to be trying to avoid the tome keeper, who's going to be walking around the library returning tomes, and players are going to want to stay out of his path. Players can also influence the tome keeper's path as well as the shape of the library to try and get the tome keeper to move in a way that benefits them. Players will also be trying to push the other players into the path of the tome keeper so that they get caught first. Each faction is going to play very different from each other with their own set of abilities that you'll be able to upgrade throughout the game, creating a lot of different permutations depending on the faction that you're playing as, and also the factions that your opponents are playing as. Actions and upgrades are tracked on the player board by using dice, and the way that players decide to upgrade their faction is also going to add more variability to the game. The game plays over 2 phases, before and after lunch, and the neat thing about the second half of the game is that every player is going to unlock their after lunch special, which is going to be a brand new ability that players get to play with during that phase of the game, which will really ramp up the second half of the game while also giving new options to the players. Players are going to be trying to collect tomes throughout the library in order to make all these upgrades, but players are also going to be looking for a specific tome so that they can upgrade their super powerful special ability that each player only has one of. And the winner of the game is going to be the first team to score 10 points, or the team with the most points when the tome keeper has returned all of their tomes back to the shelves. A really tight little game here that looks like it offers quite a lot, so it's no surprise that this one's our Discord pick of the week, and I think you can definitely have confidence if backing this game. If you go ahead and check out the ratings tab over on BGG, there are a few comments from people that have played the game, and this is one that really rang out to me, and that's that the game has a ton of strategy in a simple package. This is an impression that I was really getting while researching the game. I really like how this game isn't super sprawling and everywhere all over the table with a ton of components. It really looks like something that can fit in a small package, but with all the different upgrades, factions, and the different options on the board, it seems like there's quite a lot that you can do in this game that will create a lot of great decisions without a whole whack of components or very complex rules that everyone's going to have to learn. So in terms of a depth to complexity ratio, I think this one will rank quite high, which is always a nice thing to see. I would like to see some more comments under the ratings tab, so if you do end up playing this game, make sure to leave a comment here so the rest of us can see what your experience was with the game. IV Games only has a couple games out so far, but they've been very well received with really great ratings on BoardGameGeek. And if you search on YouTube, you can also find all sorts of reviews from different people, and they all seem to really enjoy the game as well. This next game looks like it's really going to fit the bill for another great game to add to their lineup, so I wouldn't be surprised if this publisher really starts to build a name for themselves for creating quality games. And I do want to get back to talking about the team in a second here, but first let's go over the testimonials. And I'm not a person who puts too much weight on what a content creator thinks about a game. I'm more interested to know why they feel that way, and what about this game sets it apart, or what about this game didn't they like? Because that helps me decide for myself and my own playstyles and interests if I think that this is a game that I would enjoy. But if you find that your tastes align with a particular content creator, I think you can definitely have confidence in how they feel about the game. But I've just seen non-stop praise for this game. Jeremy Howard says it's damn good. Becca Scott loves it. Jesse gave it a 5 out of 5. But Alex came in with a very strong statement saying that this is the best abstract game that he's played in years. And take that with a grain of salt, because what he's saying is that it's the best game that he's played for his tastes. But at the same time, if you watch Alex's channel, you know that he plays a ton of games. So to put this one at the top of all his abstract games, I think is really setting this one apart. And another thing I find kind of interesting is I keep seeing the word abstract as I research this game, and every time it kind of comes at me as a surprise, because this does not seem like an abstract game. It definitely is, but there is a lot of theme with this game, which you really don't see with many abstracts. So this game might be offering something to both the thinker and the themer. Now let's double back to the team and the part of this video where I mentioned that this is my pick of the week. And the reason I'm picking this one is because of how well this campaign is run and how great of a job this team is doing. This team has been very active engaging with the community as well as other content creators in the space, and they even have their own YouTube channel that you can go ahead and check out, and they put out all sorts of videos covering all sorts of reviews and topics, and it's not just restricted to the games that they design, which is really unique to see from a game designer or a publisher, and it's pretty cool to see that they're just interested in the hobby just like any one of us. And something you may not know about me is that I actually run my own company and I manage a team of developers, and I've interviewed and hired a ton of different developers over the years. But the ones that really stand out are the ones that have a genuine passion in development. And although it's not a requirement for the job, when you really have a passion for the thing you do, everything just comes a little bit easier and you have a lot more fun doing it. And you'll often find yourself working till late hours in the night, not because you need to get something done or because you feel pressured. It's because you're genuinely having fun with the problems that you're solving and you're taking the time to solve them in an elegant way. And picking up on that is a skill that I've developed over time, and I'm not always right, but I am sensing that behavior here with this team and the way that they design their games. And it doesn't just have to do with their game, it has to do with everything they're doing, whether it's their YouTube channel, their website, which I love by the way. I like how this is gameplay focused, and all I have to do is scroll a few times and I get a really good idea of how this game will play. The artwork for the game is amazing, they've won a ton of awards, and everything's just really fun. Like, they just put everything here in a fun way. And I'm probably not communicating every little detail that's giving me this impression, but when you see this attention to detail in everything that a team does, you can expect that the game that they're releasing will also feature that same attention to detail. And that, along with everything else, just gives me a lot of confidence in this team's ability to playtest their game, streamline it, put together a great rule set and rule book, and just put together the whole package in a way that's going to be something that is the best that it can be. I also really like to see why back now sections to just spell it out for us, so kudos there. And you'll get some free pins if you back in the first 48 hours. I'll have links to all these campaigns in the description below. And while we're on the topic of teams that I've been super impressed by, we have the Tanares RPG by Dragori Games launching on August 31st. And this is going to be a full-fledged campaign expanding on the world of Tanares Adventures and Arena the Contest. And there actually is a bit of history here because this whole IP was actually sparked by a RPG session that the team had played. During that session, they had the idea of a player versus player match, but it wasn't supported by the system that they were using, and they decided to try and create their own system to allow for PvP within an RPG setting. As they expanded on this, it evolved into something that they called an RPG experience in a box, and that's something that we came to know as Arena the Contest. So in a way, this campaign is the team going back to their roots and completing that initial goal that they set their sights on of creating an RPG experience. Just to be clear, this campaign is a cooperative campaign, even though the initial idea spawned from incorporating PvP into an RPG setting. But the rule set for this campaign does allow for PvP, and you might see yourself presented with opportunities such as arena combat. And something really awesome that I want to point out before closing this page is that you can actually go ahead and download a free introductory campaign if you want to go ahead and sample a little bit of what this has to offer. I took a look at it, and it's not a small campaign. I think it'll actually take you a few sessions. So if you're interested in RPGs at all, or if you want to try one, this is a great way to get started. And if you're familiar with campaigns and you just want to see if this is right for you, you can go ahead and check that out. I think you'll get a really good idea if this is something that you'll like. And of course, you can go ahead and try it with your friends. And this campaign has more than just RPG material, so stay tuned, but it is focused primarily on these 3 books, which is the Player's Guide, the Tanares Campaign Sourcebook, and the Adventures in the Realms of Madness. And this has a very stacked team. Everyone here looks like they're bringing quite a bit of experience to the table, and some of them even have experience with designing games like Skyrim and Fallout 3 and 4, as well as writing and hosting for Geek and Sundry, and just a lot of other awesome experience in here as well. And I'll just scroll through and you can see for yourself. The Player's Guide is going to provide the rule set and characters that you'll be able to play with, along with their classes and powers, and it'll also outline different things like hunting dragons, breeding drakes, and maintaining your headquarters. This also has the rules for PvP, which you'll be using in cases for arena combat. And I did go ahead and download a sample of the book. I'm not going to go into too much detail on it, but I thought it'd be good just to show a little bit of what you can expect and the level of professionalism, the artwork, and a little bit of how the classes are outlined and the different details that come along with this. And it's also very high def and slowing down my computer, so I'm going to close this tab now. If you want to see more of that for yourself, check out the campaign, which I've linked in the description below, because they have samples of all 3 books that you can go ahead and download for yourself. And then we have the campaign sourcebook, which outlines the whole entire world and setting, and it gives details into the 11 different provinces that you can visit, as well as their extraordinary sites and locations that you can explore. And it also provides details on the underground and supernatural planes that cover most of the world. So as you're exploring, you'll be exploring the main world, but there's also an underground portion to it and a supernatural realm that is a little bit different depending on the location that you are on the map. This is a really neat concept because it adds a lot more to explore on top of the world that already sounds very interesting on its own. And the reason I say that is that the main world takes place in a constantly changing landscape. It's a high fantasy realm, and it's going to be constantly changing depending on different plot hooks that you encounter, natural disasters that will change the entire geography. And then there's also a concept of avatar dragons, which share a bond with the different regions. And if something happens to those dragons, it'll have game-changing effects on those different regions that they're associated with. And players can actually choose to start the game with some of these dragons already dead, so that it changes the landscape of the world that you're jumping into. So I'm already seeing a ton of depth, and it looks very impressive so far. And the sourcebook is also going to provide all the info that you need for all sorts of scenarios that your characters can run into. And the Adventures in the Realms of Madness is going to provide all the different journeys that players can explore as they play the game. And there's going to be branching journeys through dungeons, there's going to be hunts for treasures, you can also expect things like investigating murders, escaping a prison, or even fighting an entity that requires breaking the barrier of time and space in order to defeat. There's also a double-sided poster map to help players explore the world, and there's also a bunch of add-ons for different things like miniatures for the different characters, villains, and classes, and a scenario pack which I believe is going to come with all sorts of different miniatures and environmental miniatures to help with different scenarios and situations that you're going to run into. And although this campaign is primarily focused on the RPG, most of these boxes here will also come with all the content that you need in order to incorporate them in the previously released board games like Tanares Adventures and Arena the Contest. This campaign also introduces 4 new classes, and they're definitely worth taking a look at. They sound super interesting and fun to play. And the first one we have is the Dragon Blade, which gains power from combos, tactics, and dragon spirit. So the better that you perform on the battlefield, performing different combos is actually going to make you stronger. And you'll be able to use that strength to summon the spirit of the dragon to use a special power list that is unique to that class. And then next we have the Mad Walker, and they gain insanity points for just doing crazy shit. And then they'll be able to use those points to spend on different powers and to activate different abilities that are only available to them. And this character is going to be walking a fine line of the physical world and the supernatural. And then we have the Elementalist that gains their power from choices, elements, and the manipulation of spells. So they'll be able to harness the power of air, fire, earth, and water and use that to their advantage. But something that's really interesting and unique to them is that they have their whole set of spells that they can learn, but they're also able to customize those spells. So you'll be able to change things like the duration, the distance, or even the power of the different spells that you have at your disposal. And then we have the Redeemer, which gains power from contrast, people, and the energy present in valuables. So their powers are always 2 sides of the coin. You'll be able to do things like hurt and heal, curse and bless, or sacrifice or redeem. And it sounds like they don't actually use magic to complete their spells. Instead, they're going to be using the energy present in the different objects that they possess or that are maybe found around them. And if you back in the first 24 hours for a pledge of $100 or more, you'll also get this Golden Dragon miniature completely for free, which is actually a really nice miniature. It's the biggest miniature that they've made to date, and you can see just for scale how much bigger it is than their regular character miniatures, which are also not small miniatures. And this dragon actually plays an important role in the RPG, but it also comes with everything you need in order to also use it in Arena the Contest. I really don't play RPGs very often at all, and I don't own any RPG material myself, but this one is actually very interesting, and not just for the board game material. The RPG itself is definitely no joke. You can just see how much effort and experience has gone into this. And if you do watch reviews for this one from seasoned RPG players, unlike me, I think you'll be really impressed with what they have to say about it. I think the world that they created here is very compelling, and those classes sound really interesting, and I really want to try each one of them. This is definitely not a campaign that was just slapped together and thrown on Kickstarter. I think this is going to be another one that if you take a look at it, you're going to see a lot of attention to detail and passion put into it. So I'm really excited to see how this one turns out. And even though I don't play RPGs often, this is one that I might end up backing and making time to try and get it to the table because it just looks that good. And if I was more into RPGs, this one probably would have been my pick of the week. So if you do like RPGs or you just want to try one out for yourself, I have links in the description below and you can go ahead to click and get notified. And just a quick update with this one, if you're waiting for Hyperwars to launch on the 31st, this one actually got postponed. There's no updated date yet, but if you subscribe to the channel, I'm sure I will announce it sometime in the future. Also on the 31st, we have Kenji's Quest, and this is another RPG style game that plays 3 players plus the Game Master, and it takes about 1.5 hours to play per game session. And this game is actually inspired by 90s video game RPGs, and it does use an app to lead players through the game, track stats, and provide art and soundtrack to help augment your experience. The app will also provide information exclusive to the Game Master that they'll use to set up certain scenarios and design the dungeons and map. And the story takes place in a world similar to Earth, but during the Middle Ages, and it follows the story of Kenji, who is a eccentric merchant obsessed with collecting rare items and augmenting them with the power of magical stones. And Kenji has requested your help to find these items through some dangerous dungeons. One of the first things you might notice when you go and check out their campaign is that there's some pretty fun components. There's potion bottles that you can actually drink from, and there's 30 different stones that you can equip to your character sheets to augment their powers, and there's a ton of optional miniatures, and you can also choose to get those painted if you are so inclined. The actual gameplay is using simplified RPG elements, and it plays over 3 different phases. There's the map phase, where the game master will present the world or a region to the players, and the game is played informally through conversation between the players and the host. When a dungeon is reached, the dungeon phase is started, and during this phase the host will set up dungeon tiles, a map, and item locations depending on how the app instructs, and players will each get 1 action per turn in order to navigate and explore the dungeon. When players find themselves faced with an encounter, the battle phase is triggered, where players will be using dice rolling and skill activation to fight back against whatever encounter they've run into, and they'll also be casting spells which they can augment by using the stones that they've found and equipped throughout the game. This campaign is going to be offering the first of 3 books, which you'll be playing over 6 different chapters, and you'll be able to create your own character, and there'll be branching paths and multiple endings for players to discover. The simple rule set allows you to learn as you play, and this is really a great option for those of you that maybe haven't experienced an RPG before and you're looking for an accessible entry point to start your journey. Also on August 31st, we have the Battlezoo Bestiary, and I don't know why I have so many RPG related campaigns in a row here, but this is going to be another one to augment your role-playing game nights. And this campaign is going to be offering a few different items, but the main thing is the Battlezoo Bestiary. And this is a really neat effort that was put forward. It all started with the 2020 RPG Superstar contest, where hundreds of Pathfinder fans submitted creature ideas to this team, and then the team ranked those different ideas, and then the winning ideas were refined by an RPG developer to incorporate them into both Pathfinder 2nd edition and the 5th edition. And this campaign is also going to be offering a sample booklet where you can go ahead and check out a few of the ideas and see some of the different creatures that you can add to your game nights. And there's actually over 100 different creatures that you can add to your game, but this team didn't stop there because they also created the Monster Parts system. And this is a brand new system that they've created that allows you to create and upgrade all your gear with your monster parts. So as you encounter these monsters out in the wild and you defeat them, you can take parts of that monster back and incorporate it into your gear to upgrade your gear and become more powerful. Along with this, they also included a brand new character called the Monster Hunter character. And these are a couple characters that not only specialize in monster hunting, but also in stealing those special abilities from the slain monsters and making it their own. But if just stealing the monsters' abilities isn't enough for you and you just want to play as the monsters, this campaign will also allow you to do that because they're providing a book called the Battlezoo Ancestry Dragons, which has 40 playable dragons for you to choose from. And on top of all that, there's also going to be a brand new adventure path offered in this campaign that's specially designed to incorporate everything I just talked about seamlessly into an adventure for you and your friends to experience. The game starts out players with a piece of a map and a hint of buried treasure, and takes players in a pirate-themed adventure over 3 different books, with a few twists and surprises along the way that players may not expect. This campaign is going to be offering these books in PDF, softcover, and hardcover, so there's going to be quite a large range in the pledge levels, which honestly I really love to see. I don't really care how high a pledge level goes up to, but I always think it's good campaign design if you are incorporating some more accessible pledge levels, which this campaign is definitely doing with the PDF versions of their content, which is something I just love because it removes all paywalls and provides a good option for anyone of any budget to be able to experience the game. Also on the 31st, we have ThreeTale, and this plays 3 players and takes about 120 minutes to play. And this is a cooperative adventure game where players will be trying to complete 4 phases. There's the prophecy phase, the past phase, the present, and the future phases. During the prophecy phase, players draw 3 different scenarios, and each one is going to predict a doom scenario that may happen later in the game. After they do that, players are going to draft their heroes. Each hero has different powers and abilities, so players are going to want to choose the one that best sets them up for the possible doom. In the pass phase, players get a chance to develop their characters and upgrade their stats and talents. Players are going to be using tile placement to build out the map, and as they're placing tiles out on the board, they're also going to be moving their characters around, trying to pick up different upgrades and improve their characters for later in the game. This phase also presents opportunities for players to enter in battles, complete quests, and collect treasures and artifacts. Then players will enter the present phase, where it's revealed which of the Doom prophecies will be fulfilled. And this is the part of the game that can play very differently from game to game, because the Doom prophecy may introduce its own mechanisms, backstory, as well as objectives that players are going to be trying to fulfill. And the different endgame scenarios might have you fighting against a powerful enemy, gathering precious resources, or it might even pin you against your fellow teammates as you try to fight for your own survival before everyone else's. Because of the nature of the game, different sessions will have different win conditions, but if you find yourself still standing by the end of the game, you've probably won. And the next few campaigns we have are launching on September 1st, and the first one we have is Earthenwar. And this plays 2 players and takes about 20 to 45 minutes to play. And this is a 2-player combat strategy game where players are going to be controlling 2 different golems on a battlefield. And the golems are going to be placed on the main board, and players are going to control their individual golems by placing dice on their control board and then activating those dice to perform different movements and actions. Players are going to have to make different trade-offs because you can only have 1 die in each spot, so you may want to sacrifice movement for attack or vice versa. As players get more dice on their grid, they'll be able to activate more per turn, which will allow them to chain different dice together and have more elaborate movements and attacks. And the goal of the game is simple, and that's to defeat your opponent, and you'll be able to do that if you can damage your opponent 3 times. Also on the first, we have Green Hell the board game, and this plays 1 to 4 players and takes about 1 to 2 hours to play. And this is a cooperative campaign style survival game where players will be acting as different characters with asymmetric stats and abilities as they try to survive and explore an unpredictable jungle environment. Players will be exploring different face down tiles in a jungle, and as you enter a tile, you're going to be flipping it face up, and the tile is going to present some different opportunities or challenges that player might face. The tiles actually offer 3 levels of difficulty, which will reveal themselves as you move deeper and deeper into the jungle. Since this is a survival game, when you're not fighting off different enemies, you're going to be trying to fight off your hunger and thirst. So whenever you get an opportunity, you're going to want to scavenge for food, water, and different supplies to help you survive throughout each day. In order to scavenge, players will be rolling different dice, and if you're able to match the dice together to form different symbols, you'll get the resources that you're able to form. Doing this will grant the player different polyomino tokens, which if you're lucky, you'll be able to fit into your backpack and carry along with you along the way. And luck does play a factor in the game because every night players will be accumulating bad luck tokens, and the amount of bad luck that you get will dictate how terrible that night is going to be. Of course, all of this can be mitigated by some handy crafting, so players will have the opportunity to craft different structures and weapons. And it'll be up to the players to decide how they want to spend those resources and the trade-offs that they want to make. Players will be trying to fulfill an objective, and if you're able to do that before the jungle gets the better of you, you win the game. I personally love survival games, so this one's very interesting to me, and I think there's a lot of really neat mechanisms with the polyomino backpack and the dice rolling, and the different events and encounters sound super interesting as well. Also on September 1st, we have Minotaur Catacombs, and this is a competitive game for 2 to 5 players where each player is going to be controlling both a hero and a Minotaur. And the player's goal is to try and escape the catacombs with their hero first, but you're going to be using your Minotaur to try and stop all the other players' heroes from leaving before you. For their hero, players will be able to choose a fighter, barbarian, wizard, cleric, or archer, each with their own unique skills and stats, and they're going to be battling their way out of the catacombs that's full of locked doors, treasures, traps, and undead. And then finally, on September 4th, we have the Band of Brothers, Old Breed South Pacific. And this is a fast-paced game of squad-level combat in World War II, and it covers the exploits of the U.S. 1st Marine Division in the battles for Guadalcanal and New Britain. And this is going to be the 5th entry in the Band of Brothers series, and it's going to use the Band of Brothers system with a few changes. And this campaign is also going to be including the 4 previous titles in their most deluxe forms. Some of the changes to the system are going to be unit company identifiers, a fog of war mechanism that's going to make the battlefield a little bit more unclear, unit national characteristics, weapon specific characteristics, new terrain, and facing, which I'm not really sure what that means, but underneath it says there's Pacific specific optional European scenarios. So maybe it has to do with the direction that you are attacking, I'm not sure. The previous releases in the series look like they've been pretty difficult to get lately, so if this is a game system that you're interested in, I'll have links in the description below for all of these campaigns. And that's it for this week, but don't leave yet because we do have a giveaway to announce, and this is going to be for the Lax Rax board game shelf insert for the IKEA Kallax shelf. And this is from the same company that made my shelf, but this is a much cheaper option, and it doesn't require you to get rid of your Kallax shelf if this is something that you already have. And this is a system that's going to allow you to put your games horizontally in your Kallax shelf. For those of us that put our games vertically, you may have already experienced issues with that, like lid creep, where your lid slowly drifts away from the box and eventually causes your components to just start falling all over the place. And for those of us already storing our games horizontally, we've run into a whole lot of other issues. For one, it's just really hard to get your board games out of a Kallax shelf when they're horizontal. There's just not a lot of room to get a grip on the game, especially when you have other games stacked on top of it and you're trying to slide them in and out, and this can actually damage your board game boxes. So the system aims to solve all those issues by combining the best of both worlds. You'll be able to store your games horizontally so components don't fall all over the place, but then you'll also be able to easily grab that game from your shelf since it'll have its own dedicated spot independent from all your other games. The whole system's also really easy to set up. It uses double-sided tape, so you don't need to drill any holes or put in any screws. And it also has these different slots in here for a measuring system where you just line up that slot with your previous board game on the shelf to get your desired distance between each game. There's also a few different heights that you can adjust for, which gives you flexibility if you decide to rearrange your collection or swap out games for other games. And if that doesn't solve your problem, you can always pop it right off and move it somewhere else. And this giveaway is going to be for the Rax Dabbler Pledge, which comes with enough parts to set up to 12 shelves. And to enter this giveaway, just leave a comment down below with the hashtag Rax and let us know of another board game accessory that really improves the board game hobby for you. For whatever reason, the sand timer has really established itself in my game nights. We just use it for any game, and if anyone just starts taking too long on their turn, anyone else can just flip the sand timer, and it's a little indication that you're taking too long.